Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take you on a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. And this episode is about the snatch. That's right. Today we're breaking down the kettlebell snatch. And the goal of this episode is not to just understand what to do, but why it works. We'll get into some mechanics, some sequencing, and we'll set you up with a few drills and things to look out for. Roger, how you doing?
I'm good.
All right. You ready to talk about your snatch?
Yeah. Well, we had another question. That's why I like to do that.
Yes.
I like to answer these questions. And this one in particular was someone's hand getting chewed up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the life of them, this person couldn't figure out, even with the legs doing the driving. So they say, we didn't see this snatch.
Mhm.
They were having issues getting their hands ground to bits with loose grip, with all the stuff. All the usual suspects came into play. So let's help everybody understand a few basic things that could help.
All right.
Sound good?
Let's see if we can help.
All right, good. So if you have questions and you want to know, get our direct coaching, hey, put it in the comment and or send a text, and we'll take care of you as best we can. Let's talk about a couple core concepts first before we get going. I know you like to set this up, and I want to talk about force production and force projection.
How about you say those again properly?
How about force production and force projection?
There we go.
Quit sassing me, boy.
I'm sorry. Okay, so you want to talk about those things. We need to start there. Those are important things. So we have an objective. So we're taking our coach's eyes and we're putting it on this problem. Even though we can't see this problem, we've got some best guesses. We have to separate these two, which is why it's important to say them properly and be able to distinguish between the two words.
Yeah.
One is
it's
about
just English, Roger. Come on.
One is about creating the force primarily in the vertical. Okay. It's about taking the bell from either from the floor or from that backswing position and getting it all the way overhead to lock out. The force projection has to do with the direction that the force goes. Where does it project? And I've heard these terms kind of used interchangeably. I'm not going to worry about that too much, but for the sake of, I shouldn't say interchangeably. I've heard them used in different ways. So for the sake of this, what we're going to talk about is force production being the feet pushing into the floor. That's going to be the engine behind the kettlebell moving upward, and the force projection being more horizontal, meaning the path of the kettlebell, how the kettlebell moves, where it wants to go, and how we control it. So we have a vertical and we have a horizontal. Why do we need to differentiate these two? Because they need to happen in sequence in order for the hand not to get chewed up. We're going to talk about a little bit later where the bell gets heavy. And by heavy, I just mean where it really exerts a lot of forces on you versus almost no force on you. But we need to get it moving above the ground. We have to, all of these kettlebell ballistics, all lifts in general while you're on earth are a fight against gravity. So we can't take our eyes off of that fight. That has to be priority one in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. Because if we can't do, now this is obviously with free weights, cables and bands, we've got different, what we call force vectors. So let's be specific here. So while we're using these, we've got to fight against gravity. We need to propel the bell first and foremost. So we need to do our leg drive and make that kettlebell go. That is going to be the primary thing. The force projection is going to be about the path. It's going to be, we talk about, pulling and the lockout, all of these things. It's how we manipulate the bell once it's up and moving. Imagine the feet being like our rocket boosters. Okay. And imagine we've got wings and rudders and all kinds of things that might change the path once this thing is off the ground. But we've got to get it off the ground first. And that has to happen primarily. This is why we talk so much about leg drive when it comes to things like swings and snatches. We talk about getting the bell to move, and we talk about the vertical because you need to use the ground. And in some instances, some coaches focus too much on hip thrust, and they talk about horizontal force production. It is not. It is vertical. Okay, you do have some horizontal force on the bell, absolutely, but we've got to focus on the straight down. And I'm spending so much time talking about this because it is essential. So first things first, you've got to crush the feet into the ground. Very soon after that, and we're talking about less than a second, you need to be able to engage your pulling muscles. Whatever those muscles are, I don't really care right now. We need to be able to keep that bell close, right? If we have a kettlebell, we start
Close
from
to
the
your
back,
body.
close to your body, absolutely. But even more importantly, close to a particular line that we're going to call out a little bit later, and that is the line of gravity, which is going to be over your feet. Okay, we're gonna talk very specifically about that. But as we're getting ready to influence the bell, we've got our leg drive. We need to drive those legs. Let's go through the sequence. We're pulling the bell into the backswing, however you set up for your stance, pulling it into the backswing, driving the feet down hard. As you get to a point where the bell is over right about the heels, okay, that's what you can start your pull, because we know that that last little bit of leg drive is about to finish and that bell's going to come away from you. You've got to keep the bell close to you the whole time, but you can do more of an active pull later, because if you finish the leg drive completely and then wait to pull, that bell's already going to be coming away from you.
Yeah, you're gonna
You're going to be
have to wrestle it back, right?
exactly right, and that's something that might chew up your grip. So we're starting to take notes here. This is phase one. Are you pulling too late? Are you keeping the bell close to your body? Because ideally, the pull in this case is not an active redirection yet. It's a means to keep the lats tight, the arm close to the body. So as the body moves, okay, feet drive into the floor, pelvis moves into the pelvis is the spine is the torso. As the torso snaps up, the arm, which lies along it, is going to make that bell go, it's going to make it shoot off. If you're not holding that arm close, as the torso moves, you're not going to get the same motion of the bell. You want the bell and the torso to move at the same rate. They're stuck together. And once that bell is up and away, we can give it a little extra tug, that little quick jerk,
Kind of like
which is
that
going to make
row.
yes, it's kind of like an explosive row. That we can do that as the leg drive finishes, because that's going to keep the bell in this nice straight line. The bell is naturally going to want to surge forward. It's going to want to have a horizontal force projection, because that is the finish position. That's the logical result of where you started. So because the torso stops abruptly and the hips have finished in that standing plank position, the only way for the bell to go is kind of up and out at a 45-degree angle. We don't want that to happen, at least not too much, because if it does, then the bell gets away from you. It has more distance away from that point. I just talked about the line of gravity, which runs through your feet, which means your grip is going to have a harder time controlling the bell. So we want strong leg drive. The arm is keeping the bell locked into the body. And as you're finishing that leg drive, you're going to give that quick tug. That is going to be the thing that is going to redirect the bell up. So at this point in the snatch, some people are going to have more of an arc. I like to go straight up if I can. I want to keep the bell as close to me as possible, especially for this use case. This use case is a grip problem. So the closer the bell is, the easier it's going to be on the hand. So we want this to happen. So you should have that bell, I would say, not more than 6 inches above in front of your face.
Yeah, it's real close. Like you can see it just like, whoop.
Yeah.
And like you have kind of like this bent arm as it's going up.
Exactly right. And even more accurate maybe than in front of your face is the line over your feet, because we're going to talk about leaning back a little bit later. But just a quick recap, because I don't want to be confusing, and this stuff can be. We need to power the bell with the legs. That is our force production. And we need to manage the force projection, which has to do with timing the pull. So we have pulling in the sense where we're pulling the arm into the body, so the bell keeps pace with you as you reach the top. And then we have an active pull. So you can call the first one passive, even though it's not. It's pretty hard.
You really got to try it that one. I will say, you want that bottom pull. You got to keep that arm to the body. It's active.
Have to.
It's very active,
Yeah,
but it's not as active as that row, that ballistic row type pull. That is.
We can call it static. We can call one a static pull, and we can call one a dynamic pull. I like
this. It's happening in real time, folks. Static pull.
So we can talk about a static pull, and then we can talk about a dynamic pull. So the static pull keeps the bell close to the body, so you get all the force from your feet into the bell. So it's going up. It's going wherever you end. Your trajectory is going to be set by the bottom of the swing. that 45 with your torso. So the static pull is going to keep the bell close to you, so you get all that force. The dynamic pull is going to help offset the horizontal force projection and redirect it more vertically. So if you do this pull right, and this is something that I'll do for students, especially when I'm outside, I'll do that quick pull, and then I'll just let go of the bell. I'll reach my arm up and I'll catch the bell with a flat palm, because I'm trying to show people that the snatch is mostly done by the time that bell gets to your waist. The snatch is pretty much finished. Okay.
Yeah, now it's doing that ballistic part, right? That
exactly
that movement
right.
against gravity.
Yes.
Or not influenced by gravity, right?
It is influenced by gravity, but it's only influenced by gravity. Gravity's still trying to pull it down, but
son of a bitch.
There are no other. We're not using our arms. We're not pulling anymore at that point. The only thing that's happening is that bell is accelerating up faster than gravity is accelerating down, and we have effectively won the fight against gravity. So I can put my hands on my hips, I can hang out, and I can wait, and I can watch, and then when I'm ready, I reach my arm up and I catch the bell, because I've done my job. Not only have I use my good force production to get the bell going, but I've used my manage my force projection so it's going up rather than out. And this is one of the most important things to think about. Usually when we coach grip, when people coach grip rather, they talk about the grip. And the grip doesn't matter if you're not using your legs enough. So we've got a drill that we're going to share with you at the end of this, so stay tuned for that. This will give you an idea of whether, in fact, you do have solid force production. But we're starting with this because this is the most important part. You've got to get that leg drive. That has to be sufficient. And that is going to be much kinder on your grip once you get that right.
Yeah. So real quick, let's recap the algorithm, because you basically hit a couple of points. So it's your arm is connected to your body, the leg drive, which is going to propel it up, rocket boosters. It's weightlifting, not weight watching. And then you redirect. That's actually step, 3 in the algorithm here, not counting stance, of course, but that's step 3. So now you've done the rest. And just like you mentioned, you're waiting for it to get to the top. So you essentially could have a hand like a loosey goosey all the way up. You don't even got to think about it. So if your hand's getting chewed up at this point, you're probably taking it from way out in front of your body. So you missed one of those first 2 steps.
Absolutely.
The leg drive or the redirect. Okay.
And that's why I do that silly thing where I catch it at the top, because I show people your hand is not even, or your arm is not even important at this phase of the snatch. You don't need
Cut it off.
Let's not go too far. The snatch will happen with or without your grip. So if you have a lot of grip going on now, you've done something wrong. So first checkpoint, first thing to check.
And it should be noted, that that's a real pro move to catch that kettlebell overhead. So better get good at this snatch before you try that. But that's not the drill we're going to share. All right. So that's the algorithm that covers it. You know, if you're not getting enough force production, maybe you can adjust your stance a little bit. Maybe it needs to go a little bit more narrow, a little bit wider, maybe not usually a lot wider, but something to think about.
Let's take a quick beat on that, because I do think that that's helpful. It's often said that the swing, the clean, and the snatch have the same engine, and I don't think they do. And by I don't think they do, I know they shouldn't. If we're evaluating things based on efficiency is using as little energy or as little force as necessary to achieve an objective. Logically, if we have different destinations, we can't have the same setup. If we're reaching 3 different places, then we can't have the starting point be the same and have the lift be as efficient as we want. And in spite of people saying that, when I watch their videos, and yes, I'm watching you online, I know their stances are very slightly different. There's a difference between a swing, a clean, and a snatch. And often, since the snatch has a more vertical destination, when people go a little bit wider and they get a little more knee bend, it can emphasize the vertical component a little bit more, and people get a little more success with the snatch. And if you think about it, we've talked about the difference between different bodies. So Jeremiah, you're a taller lifter than I am. You have longer legs and a shorter torso. You are going to, you're going to do more of a hinge than I will. Your torso will be closer to parallel with the ground, and that will be comfortable for you. that sets your trajectory, meaning that bell is going to want to come forward on you more than it's going to want to come forward on me. So if
So I have
we're
to pull extra hard.
you have to pull extra hard, which could chew up your grip. So if you get your feet a little bit wider, you bend your knees a little bit more, and you really are mindful at having that torso closer to 45 rather than closer to parallel, you're probably going to do some work to save your grip. So that's another takeaway right there. That's another thing that you can monitor. Can I widen my stance a little bit? You know, you don't want to go too wide, because we've talked about this with other lifts. If we go too wide, we take away our ability to put force into the floor. That's going to happen most efficiently when our feet are somewhere between our hips and our shoulders for most of us. Okay, unless there's a good reason that that's not the case. So we go wider than the shoulders, all of a sudden our force projection's not awesome, and we don't even have enough juice to get to the top of the snatch to begin with. So anyway, stance is something to think about. Go a little wider, bend the knees a little bit more. That may be helpful.
Yeah. And again, it's just like hitting these boxes on the algorithm, these checkpoints. You have your stance. Is that the issue? Are you driving your legs enough? And then do you have your arm to body connection? And then are you getting that redirect? Let's talk about some of the common errors and maybe some fixes for these things. I want to start with over pulling early, something that is this the shimmy that we talked about prior to this, Roger, where you get the hips do like, hey, Elvis, baby. Oh, thank you very much. Let's talk about that. How do we fix that? That's nonsense.
Well, I think generally you wait. So this is why we spent the time talking about the two pulls that are kind of hiding early in the snatch. If you think, oh, I got to pull early, and you think active pull, and this is where coaching can break down. This is why we have to be specific and we have to go over these details. If you think, oh, I got to pull early, and you're pulling right away, you can use the upper body, that row. Your arm's attached to your torso. I know it seems silly to point out, but it is. So if I've got a right snatch and I'm pulling my right arm back, my right shoulder is going to move back, and my right hip will probably move back to some degree as well. So if I'm pulling too early, the active pull, the dynamic pull, then one, I'm not letting my full distance between the floor and where I end in the standing plank express itself. Distance equals force in this case. Okay. So the more distance the bell travels over, the more force that I have for my snatch. So one, I'm cutting my force production short, which is a no-no. But the second thing that's happening is the bell isn't accelerating up as fast. It hasn't really gathered as much force, and my force pulling back will be able to offset it. So when I get that strong tug, I will get my right hip behind my left, and there'll be a little bit of shimmy usually. So it'll be the right hip will move back, the left hip will move forward. And then as I go toward my lockout, my right hip is going to come forward again to catch the bell, and it's going to look very pronounced. So it's going to look like I'm kind of doing a weird hula hoopy thing. Okay, I've got a little shake.
So keep the active pull longer is what you're saying. And then
Also,
after you go ahead.
Oh, but one more thing. Sorry. Think about same side heavy. Think about driving that right leg down a little bit harder than left. Both legs need to drive, but you might find as you're going into your snatch, you will shift away from where the weight is heavy. A few things can happen, but I've found if I focus on driving that same side leg down, because that's where you're going to have more of the mass, that will also help alleviate that a little bit. So wait for your pull, same side heavy, really drive that same side leg down, and that's often helpful.
Same side heavy, keep the static pull, that arm connected to your body until you fully express the force. Yes, Luke, with your hips finishing, and then you hit that redirect, which will help it just float on up, and then you can catch it with no hands.
The dynamic pull, yes, that's going to happen as you're finishing the hips.
All right, another hot button in the snatch is the off arm mechanics. Whether you use it, how you use it, there's a lot. You see this often, Roger, and let me know if this is what you were thinking when you prep this. Is it about the arm flying way far back behind you, opening that body up more, or how are you getting into these off arm mechanics?
It's about control. When you're moving, when you're doing anything athletic, it's often helpful to use your entire body. So I would challenge you to go jump as high as you can, and then do it without your arms. There's no way that you're going to jump as high. So there's something in biomechanics called force summation, or the summation of forces, where you take the sum, you're adding all of these things up of all the forces that you're producing. And if they are in the right direction, in the same direction, they're all going to work toward moving either the body or in this case, the kettlebell. We want a good off-arm swing. And if you can take that arm and point it straight behind you, and it goes to all the way up to pointing at the ceiling, and then you can bring it and spin it in a circle, and you can maintain control, then that is going to be the most force that you're going to be able to produce as long as it's moving forward in that sagittal plane. Spoiler alert, you're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, because we talk about shoulder mechanics in the press. It's not going to do that.
Sure, it's not going to do that. But that would theoretically give you the most force behind the lift. So what you want to do is you want to swing your arm as much as you can and as hard as you can, and let that force contribute to the snatch. The problem is if you can't control it, or if this often happens when you point behind you. If I see somebody is kind of overusing that arm, I will often look at where's the hand pointing. This is a really easy thing that you can do. Take a video of yourself. If it's pointing behind you, then you're likely over rotating. When you swing back, think about pointing back at a 45-degree angle. Okay.
To your heels or something like
45 degrees from the frontal plane. So the frontal plane is going to be right about here. So you don't have to keep it straight out. Bring it back somewhere between the frontal plane, which is this way, and the sagittal plane, which is this way. Think about it coming back at a 45. That should be fine. Find something to point to, actually put an object there. And so if I'm doing a right snatch, I would have something behind me to the left at the appropriate angle, and I'm going to point to that. And then I'm going to bring my arm forward. Now, wherever you finish with that arm, some people will finish here, some people will keep it to the side, some people will tap the bell with a swing. You can't do that with a snatch, so it's got to stop either here or here. That's fine, but you want to make sure that you're not bringing. For those of you watching this, you can focus on the Iron Revival logo on my t-shirt. Watch what happens as I move my left arm back. You can see that logo rotating toward the outside of my body, and then I bring that arm back and forward. What's going to happen as a logical consequence is that logo is now going to be pointing toward my opposite shoulder. What I've done is I've introduced rotation into the movement that I have to contend with. That might disrupt the hips. It's definitely going to disrupt the path of the bell. I'm going to be introducing some strange forces that I have to contend with, and that can take away my force and make it harder on my grip.
All right. And if you're not stable, can you just leave your arm hanging by your side until you get all that sorted out?
You could, but I don't recommend it. What I do
no
recommend,
zombie snatches.
No, what I do recommend is leaving, either pointing to a target behind you or just leave it hanging out to the side. Just point it straight out. And as you get control over this, this is helpful. This is something when I was working with Czar Horton, great coach, he was pointing this out. I had this tendency, and I think this tendency is a little bit more pronounced when you have lifters who have wider shoulders than their hips. They've got upper body mass, and they're really easy. It's really easy for us, I put myself in this category, to over rotate. So most of the time when I'm snatching, my tendency is just keep it out to the side, because if I start going with that arm, it really creates more rotation. It creates more of a detriment than a benefit. So I tend to just leave my arm hanging straight out to the side. Not hanging, but out.
Yeah, but out to the side. And what I sometimes do is at the beginning of a snatch session, if I'm going to be snatching, usually that's kind of what I do in a session, particularly for what I'm training for now. But I will do that arm out to the side and then slowly find that distance. And I videotape every rep, so I can humble brag.
Huh?
Yeah.
Or do you record it?
It's a Super 8. It's a Super 8.
Sorry.
It's really hard to watch back, but like it's the same tape. But then I just started to kind of find that zone, and that's just the practice aspect of it. And I will cover that a little bit more later on. So
hold on. Do you remember the sound of rewinding? How many people don't know that sound?
I know it could come up right now, and you'd be like, "Oh, something's wrong."
What is that?
Yeah,
Anyway.
We used to have the rewinder, the extra rewinding machine. You know, so we had to get right to that next video. So you had to take Back to the Future out, put it in the rewinder, and then pop in number 2, because you got to watch that back to back.
Sure.
All right, all right. Enough of that antique talk. Let's talk about when the bell feels heavy. You started to mention one of them earlier, but what are I would say probably like there's probably like 2 point. I think it's the same point where it's the heaviest, but where
It
are we
is.
at with the? It's two
Okay.
times, but it's the same point, right?
So we're playing fast and loose with terminology, but I don't care. Um,
Yeah, fast and loose.
heavy.
It's hard style, by the way.
I'm looking at heavy as a subjective thing rather than an objective thing. When you look at the formulas, we're dealing with mass of an object multiplied by the acceleration of gravity. Well, when you accelerate more than gravity, you don't have the same, at least as it relates to a kettlebell snatch, you don't have the same sense of forces bogging you down. So the mass of the bell is not going to change. If you were to slow it down and weigh it, it's still going to weigh the same. But if you did have it rigged up to some other sensors, you would find there are even tension scales and things that you could potentially do. You're going to find as that thing tugs faster or accelerates more than 9.8 meters per second square, it will register as more than 24 kilos or whatever it is. So my point is that weight is going to be a subjective experience. So imagine I'm swinging a kettlebell. This will be easier to see. I'm swinging a kettlebell, 2-hand swing, and I drive my legs down, swing goes well, and I bring it up and it ends in the float, chest level. Is that bell heavy?
Well, not at that moment.
No, that's why they call it
for
the
a brief
float.
moment. Yeah,
It
it's
floats.
weightless. It's magic.
Yeah. So, but what happens if I were to grab that bell with 2 hands as hard as I can? Is it heavy?
Now it's a dumbbell.
Okay, but
It is
it
heavy.
is. It's super
'cause
heavy.
You're fighting gravity at that point. It's a
Exactly
fight.
right. I'm going to
Can't
snap
win.
something. So when we think about when it's heavy, is when are we fighting gravity? We do need to remember that we will experience forces in the horizontal. Okay, we've got something called centripetal force, which is a center-seeking force, which is going to be what we feel as the bell's on the end of our arm. As the bell surges to move away, we're going to feel a centripetal force on the shoulder. That's what's keeping us connected. Okay, that's the tether between us and the bell. We are going to feel some force when we're trying to redirect the bell, that dynamic pull. Okay, so we're going to feel forces there. We're going to feel forces anytime the bell is in our hand. There's going to be something. There's going to be friction, which is why if you do enough volume with snatching, you're always going to come to a point where your grip hurts because you can't get rid of the friction. Okay, you can do the hand care, you can use chalk. That's cool. It'll minimize those things, but you're always going to have some friction. What we're talking about specifically is the two most important moments are going to be when the bell is down between your feet over what we call the spot, right in between your feet when the bell is closest to the ground, gravitational pull is going to be the strongest, and up at the top when you go to your lockout. Okay, once you make that bell stop, that's when it's going to be the heaviest. In between, we're really just talking about that force projection, we're talking about that horizontal path, and we're talking about controlling it. So you want to make sure that you deal with the 2 points where the bell is heaviest the best. When the bell is between your feet, that static pull, keeping the arms connected, really, really important. If you have your arms glued to your body, you are not just using your grip to keep the bell in place. You're using your whole body. Yes, I understand you're gripping it, but you are using your legs to drive the thing. And if anything, the torso is kind of pushing. You're holding on to the bell, but you're not yanking the bell up. One of the biggest mistakes is that if you're not driving the legs down hard and the bell is still rising, or if the bell rises ahead of you, that means you're pulling it. Even if it's just slightly, you're pulling it, and that's going to really tax the grip. That's going to be really hard. The second time is once you hit the top of that snatch, the lockout. Okay. Once you get to that lockout, that bell should be going up. We talked about being able to catch it in that overhead position. Once it's going up above especially the eye level, I like to think about beating the bell to the top. That bell's going. I want to get my hand there faster than it because I want to be ready. I want to use my force going up, driving my arm up, okay, to offset the speed of the bell reaching the top. And if I can do that, the bell's going to have a tendency to want to come up, keep going a little bit rather than setting down and being really heavy in my hand, which means I'm going to have a big wrist slam potentially, but I'm also going to have a little bit more tax on my grip. So we want to understand when this thing is heavy, and when it's heavy, we want to move it with our bodies as much as possible. And in the case of the lockout, you want to beat it to the top.
That makes sense. Well, that's when it feels heavy, everybody, even though it might just be heavy. Uh,
Honorable mention is going to be that dynamic
ooh,
pull. That's
yeah.
when you're really redirecting it, when you're using force to move it another way. That's when it's going to feel heaviest. So you want to
Yeah,
think
because
about
that's
that
when the
too.
fight's happening.
Mhm.
That's when the fight's
Yeah.
happening, and you got to win these fights.
But again, you're doing this. I like to think about timing my pull back as my hips are coming forward. It's kind of a big snapping thing, and my hips and my pull work in unison, and I get a really good snap, and that snap really helps send the bell forward. So think about really pulling with the whole body, and think about the hips coming forward helping the arm pull back, because that synergy there will make it a little easier on your grip as well.
I like that. That's good. Think about that. That's all in the timing right there.
Yes,
Now,
yes, sir.
let's. Now that being said, I think that tees us up for the next thing, which is if you do that right, you'll likely be keeping the bell over the foot, which is you're big on this keep the bell over the foot thing, right?
Yes, yes,
Did your
I am.
lights time out?
Yep, apparently. Oh well, we're gonna.
We're doing it live, folks.
um,
So let's
it
talk
did
about
it.
that, keeping the
It
bell over
died.
the foot.
So the keeping the bell over the foot is where we minimize distance. Distance is really important when we're getting into physics, and when we're getting into the perception of when we get into the perception of weight or what's heavy. So really simple way to do that, you can hold a small kettlebell, okay, like a lantern, like I need right now because my light just went out, and I can hold it really close, not going to be that hard. I bring it all the way forward and my arm's going to want to drop, because what I've done is I've increased the moment arm, the distance between the pivot point and where the center of mass hits the bell. I've increased that distance. I've increased the moment arm. So when that gets heavier, gravity can exert more torque on me. It's harder for me to hold things up. When you're doing a lift like this, there are a lot of points that you could focus on, but I like to focus on the foot as kind of the master pivot point. This is the point around which the whole lift is organized. So I want to make sure that I keep the bell as close to the foot as possible, because if it gets farther away, I'm going to feel more strain on my shoulder, my elbow, my wrist, and my grip. And that's the problem we're trying to
Shocker.
solve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the simplest ways to do that is as I get my pull, right, as soon as that pull happens, I'm leaning back because I've launched that bell straight up. I'm pulling that bell. I'm keeping my arms close to my body as I can. I've got that dynamic pull. It's shooting straight up over the feet. And I want to get out of the way. If I don't get out of the way, the bell's going to hit me in the face. Or, I have length to my arm. You think about it, your forearm has length. Well, if I can lean back through the ankles, I'm displacing the length of my forearm. I'm moving it behind my feet. So the belt can just float straight up. It doesn't have to go farther out. So it's almost like it's like a little jet of air, and it's just riding that to the top. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean forward right at the last second when I time that punch, snap, the hips of vertical plank, everything snaps into place. Boom, I catch. The lean is the thing that allows the bell to stay straight over the feet. It's going to minimize all of the difficulty on the grip. And this is another common problem if people are having grip issues. They're not doing that lean. Now, on the way down, I've got a bell here. I can't pull it straight down without hitting my head. I don't want to do that. So
No.
I'm looking to connect my tricep to my armpit. For me, that is the closest point. Maybe it's a little different with your experience, but you're looking to get your arm on your body to some degree. And the two closest points I can find, I'm thinking about bringing that tricep right into my armpit area. And then my elbow will be connected. As I'm doing that, as I'm making that connection, again, I'm moving my head out of the way so the bell can drop
By leaning
straight
back
down.
through the ankles.
Yep.
And it's going to get that tricep to the armpit quicker. I love that tricep to the armpit as opposed to tricep to the ribs, only because that armpit, when you think about it, when you're going through this process, it's a lot closer to you than your ribs. If you wait for your
Mhm.
ribs, you might let that arm kind of get out in front of you a little bit, and then you
Yeah.
finally get there, and it just disrupts the timing
Or
and
to the side.
the efficiency. Yeah, or yeah, that flare, which I'm guilty of from time to time, which is why you make that room through the lean back in the ankles. And in order to lean back in the ankles, you got to have a nice rigid body. You're like your tension throughout your body's nice and strong. So you're leaning back through your ankles and not through that T-spine, I guess, is where you would
Sure.
go back
Or
to,
your neck,
or
your arm,
bar,
wherever.
or wherever.
Now,
Yeah, exactly.
now let's go back to this idea though. When is the bell heavy? Now we've established that it's not at this point. It's in free fall. The bell's only
Mhm.
heavy when you're opposing it, when you're trying to change its direction with force.
The
For
bell's the
our
happiest it's ever going to be in that moment.
for our purposes, let's just equate heavy with forces. So when
Okay.
we're putting extra forces on that bell, that's when it's going to feel heavy. We're letting the bell win. We're letting gravity win in this case. Maybe we have an active tug, but let's say we're just letting it fall. So we've got that connection. We're letting it fall, and then once it gets the arms all the way on the body, then you can start, as the forearm starts to come back down, then we can start letting the hips come forward. And that last connection between the hips and the forearm, that will be your body returning to that vertical, returning to that standing plank. At which point, once you get wherever you are in your forearm, your final point of arm to body contact, that's when you're going to break back into your backswing. This is how it's happening ideally. These are going to be obviously very difficult to time perfectly, but generally
That's why we
speaking, this is
practice.
when exactly this is when everything should happen. So if you're doing that leaning, especially if you can do it with a tight arm, because guess what? When you can lean, you can actually pull that bell back and you can bring it forward because your arm is rigid and it's attached to your body. Okay, that's attached. You can start to change that bell path with your whole body rather than just pulling with your bicep or your lat. And that is also going to take some strain off of your grip.
You got to just be engaged, basically.
Yep.
If you're lazy on these snatches, they're going to mess you up. I will tell you that. Now you've got the bell, the arm's connected back to your body. You want to go back into that heavy point again, which is the spot. So now the bell's pointing down, and you're going to receive it by actively pulling the hips back, right? To kind of
Actively,
load it
yes.
up. It's active. So you're loading that spring to shoot it back to the next rep
Mhm.
or safely place it in front of you. You're receiving that force or absorbing the force. I forget. We had a big debate in the comments about this, but
It wasn't a big debate at all. It
it was
was
huge. It was
it
at
was
least a
something
two
interesting
back
to
and
think about.
forther.
No, we appreciate comments.
Yeah, we love it. Actually, it's fun.
This was what I'm talking about specifically here, and I don't know if you've ever done this. I've done this. I don't know if you've ever dropped something, but right before it hits the floor, you've kicked it.
Mhm. Yeah,
And what?
kettlebells.
Okay, don't do that with kettlebells. But if it's not that heavy, if it's something that would have broken, there have been plenty of times where I'll kick it just a little bit, and I will take all of that kind of vertical momentum and I'll put some of it horizontally, and the object doesn't break.
It displaces its
Yeah. So we're
force, really.
using we're using the horizontal to offset the vertical. As the snatch is coming down from the top, we got a ton of vertical momentum. We've got a ton of that vertical force. And when we reconnect by actively pulling the belt back through the hips, we're using the horizontal to offset the vertical. So that's also going to be something that can take away strain from the grip, and it's going to help you handle the vertical force, the descent of the kettlebell better. And you're using, again, your whole body rather than just your hand, because a lot of grip problems you may start to see are really just about when you're using your grip only. You're not using your arm attached
Your whole
to your
body.
body. Exactly right. You're just
Yeah.
using that grip, and when it goes solo, you can run into some trouble.
All right. And then, we talked about getting the bell up at the top, beating it to the finishing position. So punch
Mhm.
quick. Don't be a lazy puncher. All right. If you're a lazy puncher, you might have that banging wrist that's going to feel heavy, or you're going to be holding on to it really tight. Also, like, pro tip, because you don't, it is heavy overhead, but you don't have to crush grip it overhead. You can have a nice relaxed grip up there. Save that grip when you get that flip and it's on its way down. Remember, you don't have to hold it. You're just keeping it in a little cage, a little soft bird. You don't want to squeeze the bird until you get down to the bottom. Then you want to crush that bird into dust. All right. Don't crush the bird until it's heavy. All right. And then you crush that bird. I like that.
And that is some people like to keep a deeper grip. Different thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a more conventional grip, because we've already established that gripping is an issue. And everybody I know who's kind of done that deep grip has a period where they've got to wear in some calluses
The
on their
palm,
palm.
yeah,
For a
that
little
palm
bit. Yeah.
callus, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a perfectly valid technique, but you have to be willing to go through that callusing process for this to be okay. So we're talking about a more conventional grip, and what what
But
Jeremiah just
regardless,
pointed out.
the points are still the same. You still got to
Exactly.
drive the leg. You still have to keep that static pull to the
Mhm.
body. You still have to have the redirect pull, that active pull. That all has, and the fast punch. No
Yep.
matter what your grip is, that still has to happen. But
And you
you will
don't
have
need
to
to
count.
grip super hard until the bell is heavy. So you
All
can
right,
let your body relax a bit.
let's talk about let's talk about a little thumbs up or thumbs gone, Roger. This drill, this is a classic. That I think you created it. I don't know. Somebody created it. Doesn't matter. We'll claim it. But let's perform the snatch without our thumb. What's that going to do for us? This is the drill. This is the drill we alluded to earlier.
Performing the snatch without the thumb just lets you know how much you're relying on your grip. If you're not comfortable doing that thing we talked about earlier, where you let the bell go, um, you're going to see how much you're relying on your grip. Now, when the bell is heavy at the bottom, you still have this hook. Okay, you don't need your thumb for that. The bell should be basically facing straight down toward the ground. So you don't need a thumb. It will be better if you have a thumb. So use your thumb when you snatch mostly. But at this point, the handle's in the hook and you can move the bell just fine. If you are moving the bell sufficiently with the legs, it's going to come up and it's going to stay in the hook. You don't
Yeah.
need your thumb. And really what the thumb does is the thumb is essential for arm pulling the snatch. You can't arm pull the snatch without the thumb very effectively. So you're going to use it. And if this is your strategy to get the bell to the top using your arm, then taking your thumb out of the equation is going to make you realize that very quickly. From beginning to end, keep your thumb off the bell if you want to see how much you are gripping, how much you're relying on your grip. I have never had a student do this drill without realizing something about his or her technique. There's been something spotted or noticed, like, this is a little okay. I've been over gripping, and then once they've cleared it up and they've been able to do the thumbless snatch, suddenly everything is okay.
All right. I like that. And that's something to practice, and make sure you alert the people around you that you're going thumbless so they don't end up toothless. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm a dad. All right. Let's talk about the recap here. We got for your snatch to be a success. We've talked about this ad nauseum, is leg drive, the keeping the arm to body contact, hitting that redirect, having that timing of that active pull as your hips are snapping to their finished position. And that's going to really just zip it up right in front of your face. All right. You got that slight lean back through the ankles, and it's going to be slight. You're not going to be like leaning way back. It's slight. And if you video this, you'll start to see it video from the side. And I'll post a video in here on YouTube and in social media that shows that exact same thing and how slight it actually is, but where that bell is in relation to your foot, because you do want it over your foot, right? Am I on point with this stuff so far?
You are indeed.
All right. And the heavy moments are opportunities to connect with that bell, to like receive that bell. You're going to have that arm connect to your body and you're like, I'm winning this fight no matter what, driving my legs hard, or your arms connect to your body. I'm winning this fight no matter what. And I'm going to gently allow it to absorb into my body by actively pulling my hips back. Don't fuck around with that. All right. Sorry for the cuss word. And then use that thumbless snatch to see how much of your arm you're actually using. It's a real exposure. And I will say this: kettlebells are skill development. So we have the 151 method for a reason. You're going to take this stuff, and if you want to get good at it, put this on while you're training and practice it one rep at a time. Am I getting this portion right? Am I getting this portion right? And then once it all starts to come together, hit the 5, which is the ladder, and then you can go into the timed EMOMs and these sort of things. And you can always go a little lighter bell, but just be smart about it. And anything else, Roger?
One other thing I want to talk about real quick is the placement of the hand as you get into the backswing. Okay. Some people call it when you rotate the thumb back, you spin the hand a little bit. Some people call it thumb to bum.
That rhymes.
Okay. So you can do either thumb to bum or you can go the opposite way. I call it pinky to stinky.
That rhymes too.
It does. But either way, what you're doing is you're turning your thumb in or your pinky in, and you're trying to get your wrist bones really deep in the crease and connect even more to your body. This can also minimize the distance that the bell has to travel, which can make it easier on the grip. As you're moving down into that backswing, again, we're talking about the horizontal force offsetting the vertical force. Well, you can even have some rotational force offset the vertical force. So you're basically taking that bell, which is spinning around one axis, and redirect it by turning either your thumb or your pinky and spin it in a slightly different axis. And that is also going to minimize force. That will also save your grip. So you can try that. You may find that either thumb back or pinky back, thumb to bum, pinky to stinky, one or the other, will feel pretty comfortable. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, if you bring your pinky back and you go elbow, you're going to armbar yourself and it's horrible for your elbow. I think it's a silly point. I've never seen it. If your technique is appropriate, then it's not going to be an issue. If you have weaknesses in a particular area, it might not be right for you, but the technique in and of itself is not inherently bad. Neither is the thumb. Many people like to maintain a neutral grip, meaning knuckles forward, a parallel grip, but not essential. And if you're having grip troubles, you might want to think about implementing one of the other two. I find the thumb in a little bit more natural, but pinky back will actually minimize the distance the bell travels. And when you're really looking at efficiency, how hard the grip needs to work, that might be your best bet.
All right, try that. All right, is that it now?
Yes.
But wait, normally I say download the app, which you should still do. But Roger, hold your book up real quick. You got to, because Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, is first seek to understand. You can grab that book on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and from there you can begin to understand. And then these conversations, your vernacular will be, at least the foundation will be laid, and then you'll get more out of these conversations. So go on Amazon, buy that book if you want to know more and see some interesting things that have changed the game for me in kettlebells and everybody I know who's read it. So that's that. Anything else?
It takes a while to get this stuff, but once you get it, you start to identify these concepts, and you can start tweaking your own form and understanding, like, oh wait, I could do X, Y, or Z and make things more efficient. So
and it's fun to go deeper on this stuff and develop these skills, and you get stuff out of it, personal development, if you will.
I will.
Okay, then we all will, and we all should. All right. So make sure you subscribe, follow, leave a comment, send us a text if you're listening on the podcast app, and we want to answer your questions. And that's it. Stay strong.